MyMichelleLive podcast.
MyMichelleLive.
Hey. There you go. Right on. So glad to have you. This is the music, just never ends. Never ends. That's okay.
Remix.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Michelle Mendoza, and so happy to be hanging out with you today. This is what we're going to be calling our State of the Union address. Really, a lot more entertaining and coherent, I'm going to say, than the last one, which may not be a nice thing to say, but you know, hey, I would say it about there are things that I said about Trump as well, because he talked in a way that no one else talks. No one else talks.
But we'll do our best to slur our words way less than our current president.
That'll work for me. We're going to do it today and get a little look at what's going on kind of across the nation as our one and only Adam Ruggieri has gone from Texas to D.C. by way of the
GMC truck, baby.
Yeah, there you go, man. And getting a little view throughout much of that side of the country, as well as some big things happening in Washington, D.C. So you won't want to miss out on this. This is what we call the Riz Report. And this is where I press the button, and then the Riz Report happens. I know, right?
I'm starting the air dancing here.
There we go.
Let's review the week. The Riz Report with Adam Ruggieri.
I'll get my Italian fist bumping going.
I'm going to share with you
the Riz Report.
A picture of our friend Adam. This is, well, you won't be able to see it because I won't be able to share it with you, but you're standing in front of this big white building. It looks like a Capitol building there in our nation's capital. There you are.
It's crazy. It's crazy how still a lot of DC is so inaccessible to the public. Just recently, they opened up the Capitol grounds since the January 6th event. And it's been really kind of crazy to see this disparity between people in DC that are demanding that public property be open to the American public because it is ours, right? It is that the Capitol is ours. This country is ours. And so it should be accessible to us. But then also this other side of people who are like, statehood for DC. It's like the weirdest thing. And yeah, it's been quite a journey to come up to our nation's capital. I was sharing with Michelle just a bit ago that my wife and I hauled our dogs from Texas to upstate New York for my grandparents' 70th wedding anniversary. And so if you can imagine a party with a bunch of people in their 90s, you know, the dance moves are there, but there's a lot more wisdom than there are dance skills. So it was really cool just to speak to some of the people in my family who have seen so much change in our country, you know, people that have lived through some of our country's most pivotal moments. And driving from Texas through Arkansas, through Tennessee, and jumping into Kentucky and then dropping into Ohio, which, by the way, that connection between Kentucky and Ohio as you enter Cincinnati, absolutely gorgeous. It's probably one of the most beautiful. Really? Yeah, it's probably one of the most beautiful views that I've seen. And it's just really cool. This kind of like hilltop view of Cincinnati. I'm friends with Cincinnati's former quarterback, his father-in-law. So it was cool to kind of see just a different perspective of the stadium and everything like that. Now moving from Ohio, then jumping into Pennsylvania, driving through upstate New York. You know, guys, I saw nothing specific to Biden. There were no campaign signs. There were no stickers on cars. I didn't see any energy or enthusiasm for the current president, despite going through states that reported pretty high voter turnout for him. And I'm talking Pennsylvania. I'm talking New York, right? I saw a lot of things in New York that were very critical of Cuomo, rightfully so. Other things very critical of Biden, but I saw nothing positive until I got to DC. And by the way, I drove through Maryland and Virginia too. Nothing there. It just kind of like, it was really quite shocking. You know, you would typically see after a big election, certainly one as polarized as the one that we just experienced, you would see the aftermath of that through stickers on cars and signs in front yards. But I saw a Trump 2024 poster in Pennsylvania. I don't even think the guy's running in 2024, but there was a poster there. So, kind of experiencing some of that, I think it really yields some credibility to the country's appetite to make sure that our elections are accessible, they're free and fair, and they have a high amount of integrity, because that is the American way. Being here in DC, Michelle, it's been really interesting, not only meeting with my congressman and his staffers, his office, but, kind of exploring the grounds of the White House and Lafayette Square and walking by Black Lives Matter Plaza. Yesterday, I had the privilege of, with my wife and I, we joined some of the SOS Cuba protesters in front of the White House. And, when you talk to these people, some of them are first generation Americans. These are people that one guy I was talking to actually served in the Marine Corps. He served the United States as an immigrant. He came to this country. He joined the service and excuse me, fought to protect our liberties. And now here he is working to try and, ensure that the same amount of freedom is given to his relatives back in Cuba. And the things that are happening there are just terrible. And
we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, because a lot of our conversation is not only back in the day, it used to be, politically incorrect. Now it's just blocked.
Right.
We are victims of algorithms on social media that feeds us what we want to hear. And not only do we not hear alternative voices, but if there's a voice that goes against what we say is the norm, then it's shut down in a clear violation of free speech. Very
much so.
We can, and we'll talk more about that. But yet, what I'm hearing you say, Adam, what's interesting is you're watching or listening right now. There is a voice of the nation that people are expressing, and I don't care who you voted for. You kind of have to know this is going on out there. Now, you didn't dip down to Florida, but that's where I've been for the last month. The southern, eastern, most of the southern part of the state, from Orlando down to Miami, and I saw a lot of Trump support and Trump flags and Trump bumper stickers. I'm wondering if what you saw in the lack of enthusiasm for Biden is that people didn't necessarily vote for Biden. They maybe those who did vote for Biden voted against Trump.
I definitely think that's characteristic of the first election against Hillary. It was people voting for Hillary against Trump. She was a very unliked candidate and really just really bad choice. Had they put somebody else against Trump, that might have been a different result. Just, back in 2016, specific to the Biden election, of course, there were other choices, right? There were Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard was a really, really strong choice that the Democrat Party decided. You know what? We think Tulsi is, she's a little too centrist. She's a little too reasonable. She's not quite enough to the left. She's not a Marxist or a socialist. She's actually an American patriot and a libertarian, and we don't like that. So I think the Democratic Party had a real chance to put somebody in the running that would have been much more acceptable to the mainstream of American public. But they chose to go with an establishment, I would say, political puppet who has been in power for almost half a century. Someone who
overlook, like there's a lot of things that we overlook.
Buddy and eulogized.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just someone who literally was buddy and eulogized a former KKK leader, Senator Byrd.
Listen,
ignoring
this is some of
ignoring so much.
This is something I want to play for you all that I've played before. And this isn't because I want to divide the nation anymore, or because I'm in a place where I want to just bash Biden, but I want to have some balance here of what you are not hearing in the news. Trump blew his nose and they called it racist, but I've not heard him say things like this. And these things that you're going to hear are over Biden's career. They are shocking and in some ways inappropriate. Take a listen.
We already have a nigger mayor. We don't need any more nigger big shots.
I learned a lot. And I learned that and Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Unreal.
I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the Negro, good for the black in the South. Other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind.
Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet. It wouldn't matter what. Is it because blacks are involved in Haiti?
All right, that's enough. It's just enough.
It's crazy. Isn't that crazy? Like, that is just such garbage, that this guy could say this stuff and to your point, Michelle, the media totally ignores it. You don't hear any of that on MSNBC or CNN. MSNBC and CNN are still suffering from Orange Man Bad syndrome, and they're still talking about the things about Trump that made them uncomfortable instead of talking about what's actually taking place in the White House today. It's freaking unreal. I can't believe it.
And this is where we're at today. So there is this sense of maybe ignoring what's going on in D.C. and why we're really glad that you're there. You've spent a week in D.C. What are some more of your observations?
Yeah. So I'll, kind of going into the conversation of the media being a political propaganda machine and not a free and fair source of actual journalism and fact checking and being the checks on power that it's supposed to be as an institution. But going to Congress and talking to people that are over there on the Hill who are here every day and realizing that, there is a true, I think, fear amongst a lot of both the left and I don't when I say the left, I mean like the center left, like are closer to our libertarian side, not the people who are drinking the Kool-Aid, but there's a fear to ask questions. Nobody is talking about Ashley Babbitt. Ashley Babbitt was the person who was shot, the only person who died on the January 6th insurrection, quote, air quotes, right? She was shot by Capitol Police, and the video I saw of that particular incident was terrible. She was definitely doing something that was inappropriate and breaking the rules. Like, you don't break into Congress, but she was not, she wasn't threatening anybody's life. Put it that way. From the video that I saw, she was wearing an American flag made into a cape. She had a backpack on, and she was also a veteran, and she was really, I think, kind of given the short end of the stick here. Nobody's talking about her death. I feel for her husband and for her family, and for people that are asking questions about her and getting no interest from journalists and no action from our lawmakers.
Or interesting questions about, wait a minute, this isn't the first time people have broken into that building. Black Lives Matter. That's okay. When there's been disruptions from, if you're going to say nobody breaks in, we're not going to have rioting or protests in this manner, you set that standard, and it needs to be across the board. It really does.
Exactly.
But, and you can call it, I don't mind if you call it an insurrection, call it an insurrection, but it's just as much an insurrection when someone from another political point of view or political little group does it as it is when a patriot or
Michelle,
someone wearing an American flag does it.
Well, the interesting thing, though, about that day is that you had this huge group of people that is being identified as one group of people, when in fact you had a big group of Trump supporters that were largely, I would say, protesting peacefully.
But then there were these segments thousands. I have two friends who were there on the ground, didn't even know that there was something going on at the Capitol building, and it was just a peaceful protest.
Right. And congressional staffers will tell you that there were large amounts of Antifa basically embedded in this group of protesters. The Antifa people were the ones that were violent. They were the ones that were breaking glass and trying to cause harm. But in fact, when you look at, by the way, also there was a CNN news crew alongside those Antifa groups. And then I believe one of their journalists was actually arrested by the FBI for their actions related to the violence around January 6th. But, MSNBC and CNN aren't going to tell you about that. They're going to say, oh my gosh, did you see what those Trump supporters did at the Capitol?
And see,
how terrible.
Part of this, the importance of this, Adam, to me, and as you're listening, is that it's not about justifying actions of right-wingers. It's about having balance and truth in reporting. Some of this is because of a weird jihadist kind of ideology from extremists on the left, and you can have extremes on anything.
Of course.
But some of it is just bad reporting. What do they think is going to sell? What, putting out information that they think is sexy and titillating.
Right.
Rather than really getting to the truth. And that's where it's unfortunate, but that's where people are tuning into what we do every week, Adam, because they
very much so.
They want to get more to the story. They want to get more to the truth. And that's a lot of what we're doing. So,
well, Michelle, it's hard to get to the truth, though, when you're not given access. And that's been a huge problem with our federal government. Of access. And so the fact that I was able to be invited by my congressman's office to actually visit the congressional offices and go to the Capitol was a real privilege. But at the same time, we do have an entitlement to access those properties, to ask questions, to have real conversations about what's going on in our country. So, as an individual, I feel very grateful to Congressman Van Taylor and his team for allowing my wife and I that opportunity. It came at a really interesting time too, Michelle, because, inaccessibility gives you a really difficult way when it comes to trying to find out what the truth is, right? And that's part of what the existing administration and the extreme left has tried to perpetuate to stop us from getting to the truth. That's why these facilities have been shut down for so long. Nobody wants us to get in there and ask questions. It's a power grab. And so,
think about what that means
on
for
a previous
just a moment.
episode of yours.
Think about what that means for just a moment.
Right.
And we'll get back to that. That means that our government
what does that mean?
is inaccessible. It means they have no accountability. If we don't have the press reporting and getting the information out and holding them accountable, then you have no accountability. So I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. Again, I tried to bring it back to balance. If you're allowing your people to not be accountable, Lord knows what they can do. Craziness.
Well, it's the Gavin Newsom thing. Good for thee, but not for me.
Yep.
Right? It's making rules for you guys, but I'm not going to follow them. It's that French restaurant thing is just an example. Pelosi at the salon when San Francisco was shut down and small business owners were hurting. You know what? Do as I say, not as I do. That's not how our government is supposed to run.
And that's where it comes to elitism. That's kind of where we're at. And as you met with Congressman Taylor and Libby Albert, you said these folks we might be able to see them on an upcoming edition of the Riz Report here, MyMichelleLive. Let's talk a bit about your meeting. What was said? What information you got? Spill the beans. Let's do
absolutely.
This.
So it was a great meeting, and the nature of the meeting was to discuss big tech censorship, and it was really interesting. I've shared with you that my agency partner Interactive brand account on YouTube was canceled for the same kind of content that you would find on any mainstream radio station, right? Discussions of big tech and Section 230 and talking about when the social networks banned Trump. Talking about other options for social media networks like Parler, but Parler got shut down by Amazon, Google, and Apple. Talking about this kind of stuff, and this is real stuff. We're talking about a competitive market. We're talking about freedom of speech. We're talking about all this sort of stuff. And my conversations with Congressman Taylor's office, in part, we touched on the class action lawsuit that President Trump filed with the America First Policy Institute and my customer, the Walkaway campaign. Now, my customer Walkaway campaign, Libby Albert is a fantastic person. She's one of the executive directors of this PAC, and her Facebook account was suspended with no rhyme or explanation. Her Facebook account was suspended. Michelle, you've experienced something similar by singing Bible hymns on Facebook, which is just ridiculous. And of course, I've experienced that on YouTube. No rhyme, reason, or explanation. Account gone. Sorry, we don't like your content. Bye. And that's just not what these platforms are supposed to do. They should be a free space to have fair conversations.
Think about this, though. Think about this. You can go on YouTube and watch WAP. I mean, come on. You can go on YouTube and watch the most inappropriate crap. And yet someone gives documentable information, asks questions. My content on YouTube was removed because it goes against the norm of vaccines. And what I had was just doctors on. I asked them the hard questions, in what the style that used to be real journalism. And that was like, oh no, you're not even allowed to have someone like that on. I mean, come on. Come on.
It's
I don't
crazy.
care who you are. Aren't you a little scared of that? I mean, there are some extremists out there, and think about, check your extremism. If this is you, where you say, well, that's good because you don't want people thinking this, or you don't want people thinking that. No, what you're saying is you don't want people thinking. And that's scary, people. It's scary, sheeple.
Don't be a sheeple. Don't be a sheeperson.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's really, it is scary stuff. And that's why I think anybody that listens to this program that has been deplatformed or censored by big tech, check out this URL. And this is the URL that will allow you to share your story with the class action suit that has been filed by President Trump and America First Policy Institute and the Walkaway campaign. Go to takeonbigtech.com. Now, the takeonbigtech.com is kind of like the main website for this particular class action suit for right now. And it allows you to share your story. And this is a really important thing for you to do, because for a case like this to succeed or to go anywhere at all, it's going to need a lot of context, and it's going to need a lot of different examples of things that big tech has done to shut down free speech. The case that we're talking about here, this class action suit, the case rests on the claim that President Trump's free speech rights are being denied by these companies. If you can get rid of the word Trump and then insert your own name there or your own company there, then you qualify to be a part of this suit. Here's where I think there's going to be some extreme difficulty when it comes to the courts doing everything that the plaintiffs want in this suit. The plaintiffs are asking for a declaration that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, this is that little clause that, I say little clause, it's huge. It shields social media companies from liability of user-generated content. But the plaintiffs here are asking that Section 230 be ruled as unconstitutional. So I think that's going to be a real problem for the legal team here, because if we are to totally get rid of Section 230, we will expose all of our social media companies to rampant lawsuits from everybody, and they're going to experience such legal burden that they're going to really quickly be bankrupted, like almost overnight, just in legal fees alone. So I think there's going to be some real challenge when it comes to that particular ask from the plaintiffs. If we were to get rid of Section 230, and if we were to expose American technology companies to massive litigation exposure, then you're kind of exposing America as a country to the threat of foreign big tech, being China's companies, right? So at a high level, it's American big tech versus international, being China big tech and Russia big tech. And we can all be honest here. I mean, most of Chinese companies, in terms of big tech, they stole a great idea from an American company anyway. But that being said, we don't want the knockoff of Google, Facebook, and Twitter and Amazon to be what rules the world moving forward. So we have to approach this really, really delicately. And I think the way to do that is to look at the Good Samaritan provision of Section 230, because I think that's what the real problem is, and it's what the big tech companies seem to exploit the most.
They hide under it.
Right, they do, because basically what it does is this Good Samaritan provision is a section of 230 that says social media companies can act in good faith to basically get rid of content that they consider obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable. So I guess if Michelle's singing on the guitar and me talking about big tech qualifies as obscene, lewd, lascivious, I mean, come on, guys. Like, that is the Good Samaritan Act here, or the Good Samaritan provision is being so abused by these companies. If they would just make Section 230 a lot more defined and way less broad.
Okay, and that's where I'm saying is that there is definition with things that are illegal. Child pornography, illegal, right?
Right.
Public nudity, illegal, right? Making threats, physical threats against somebody else, illegal. There's things that are already illegal. Those things shouldn't have a place. I mean, they
absolutely.
I understand the just put it all out there idea that it's complete freedom of speech, but remember the old adage, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And Michelle, Twitter has hid behind Section 230 to shield themselves from liabilities related to child pornography on their platform. There was a 13-year-old that sued Twitter because there were nudies of him on Twitter. He didn't post them, but some other person did. And he requested that Twitter take those down. I have no idea why, but Twitter was like, nah, we're going to leave them up. That makes no sense to me at all. But when they were sued,
no. But Adam, don't you dare talk about.
Yeah, right.
And Michelle, don't you dare sing "Little Jesus Song." Don't you dare sing "Little Jesus Song" because that there's lewd.
No. Yeah, it's like the who's that commercial? Is this was it Matumbo? He's like, no. Oh, none of that. Like that's literally what's going on here. And so the fact that these companies can hide behind 230 the way they have, it's just a total abuse, and really it's unfair, and it has to stop. And I think that the real remedy here, just like the emotional side of me does want to see this class action suit result in like big punitive damages, just sort of as like like jerks, but like the professional in me says the real remedy here is getting rid of, it's truly defining and making more objective everything within Section 230 so that it's not abused anymore.
Yeah.
That's the only way forward to make this really work. It's going to be a legislative action.
Yep. Everyone's watching the no right now. It's there. Yeah.
Michelle, you know what's interesting, by the way? Here's what's interesting, right? So the day that I had like a great 45-minute meeting with Congressman Taylor's office was also the day that I joined the class action suit by sharing my story with the takeonbigtech.com access point. I went to that website. I shared my story there. I also shared it with Libby directly. And you know what's crazy, Michelle? Yesterday morning, I woke up to a message from my marketing manager in Dallas, and she said, "Hey, our YouTube channel is back."
Wow.
What? Michelle, I have emails from YouTube saying your appeal has been denied. I appealed that thing well over 10 times, right? And to go through all these, to jump through all these hoops, to make all this noise, most people are not going to do what I did to get a channel like this back, or to get
most people can't
like
figure out how to do it. Let's just be really honest. You know, this may have happened to you as you're listening or watching. They do not make it easy to do that appeal. Do you have any advice on that? Or is there anyone even there reading those? I mean, I know in some cases we have gotten responses. Other cases it just seems to just disappear into the ether.
Yeah, I mean, squeaky wheel gets the grease. Now, in America, thank God we still do have a fair amount of liberties, right? Like, if I did what I did in another country, like in Cuba or in Venezuela, I just would have been shot, right? I just would have been shot. Like, they would have just said, you know what, this guy is a threat. He's saying stuff that we don't agree with. Boom. I mean,
no offense, my friend, but we thought maybe 10 years ago we wouldn't be at a place where free speech would be absolutely cut down, denied. So, I don't want to use the slippery slope argument. That's an illogical argument. It's just really not, but in a way, you do have to ask that question. If we don't take a stand now, are we going to look at, oh, I'm sorry, I can't believe you have that point of view. Psh, I mean, come on.
And that's what's going on in Cuba right now. I mean, and the extreme of the loss of our liberties and the degradation of our freedoms, just little by little, the congressional staffers on the Hill sort of agreed with me in saying that the biggest threat to our country will come from within. And it's not just what they've identified, but it's also what Karl Marx identified when basically trying to figure out how socialism would take over the world. And so the biggest threat to our freedom, to our democracy, will come from within. It won't be an outside force, though an outside force may have influence, as we've seen. China's had a lot of influence in our country. Russia's had a lot of influence as well. And now we have groups like Black Lives Matter as an organization, very, very dangerous, very clearly Marxist. And they're supporting Cuba's regime right now as Cuba goes out and takes out people for doing what I do, Michelle, doing what you do as well.
And we do know that what we're hearing from the Black Lives Matter movement now is that America is to blame for the ills in Cuba. How did that
That's ridiculous.
place? And how do you spin doctrine that?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like saying, oh man, had JFK or the Italian mafia been successful in taking out Castro in the 60s, this wouldn't, there's no logic to it. It's just ridiculous, it's absolutely ridiculous.
But you were there among some of the protesters there at our nation's capital. Can you give us a little bit more thought or insight into what was going on there, what they were thinking? What was the message they're trying to get out that is not picked up? Because I didn't hear about it on the news. So let's report it here.
So, okay, great. So a lot of the protesters that I was speaking with, they say, hey guys, Florida, the United States, there are so many Cuban Americans here. There are so many Cubans, first and second generation now Americans, who have family in Cuba, and they feel that America should go into Cuba militarily and take things over, or they should allow Cubans to assemble in force and go back to Cuba and literally take it over from the existing regime, the existing dictator. The Cuban Americans, I should say, that I was talking to, one of them being a former Marine serving in the United States, he said, listen, for us to go back to Cuba and to actually fight, we're not invading Cuba. He said, we're taking over a country that's ours, that was taken from us. And that made me think about some conversations I've had with some friends of mine who work for some of the larger companies, like Bacardi, for example, had a lot of its company assets just totally basically absorbed by the government. Other companies in the United States, all of their assets, their factories, their business operations were just kind of taken over by the government. They were basically turned into public property. So, from a business perspective, but then also from a living free and having having a.
We'll give you a second here. I think we had a little bad connection. That's all right. I think we'll get you back here in a second. Just joining in. There you go. You're back. Oh, we lost you for just a second. Second. That's okay. We're not missing a lot. What we are hearing is what's of real concern to people around the world as we play this word game in America. We play loose with freedom of speech, and we bind and ban things that we don't think fit into the narrative. And I'm going to tell you, I don't care where you're at on your ideology, because we can talk about it. I learn from people who are extreme right wing, and some of the extreme is just weird. I'm sorry, right and left.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I'm not going to lie.
It gets pretty weird.
I'm sorry, wherever you think you stand, but if you get too extreme on anything, you get weird. You just do. But I learned from that. I want to listen. I want to hear what you have to say. That's where we have that diversity really helps us to grow. The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And you think of what happens when you're sharpening iron, or when you have in the classic duos, the swords, those shiny swords. They're meeting and sparks fly. But as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Sometimes it sparks. Sometimes we don't like it. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but we can learn and we can grow. But what we're seeing with the complete annihilation of speech, you are literally admitting that you're afraid of truth. You're afraid of your truth being challenged because maybe your truth isn't truth enough. But I'm going to tell you, if your truth is truth enough, even the Bible, God says, come, let us reason. God says this, test me, try me, prove me. What? God's not saying, oh, I'm sorry, you don't agree with me, canceled. He's like, bring it, right? If God himself can say that, then Black Lives Matter, Kamala Harris, all y'all who defund the police, big tech, social media, what the heck are you afraid of? Just let the questions be answered.
Exactly.
And let the conversation happen. That's my thoughts.
Right on, Michelle.
Come on.
Right on. I mean, if the truth is so scary, well, let's talk about that, right? Why is the truth scary? Let's talk about the truth, because the truth will expose something better and greater and productive. I'm even going to be
balanced and say what challenges to going ideas, because, truth. What is truth, right? I mean, not to be Pontius Pilate there, but what is truth? Well, let's let it weigh out. When we look at science weighs out theories and ideas, and then some get more weight and others don't. So don't be afraid to ask those questions and have that conversation, because really, Adam, what we're looking at here as free speech tends to go by the wayside is what you have called a ripple effect.
Right. When you see basically one thing fall, it's like a domino, right? And when you lose one liberty, well, it degrades the strength of another. And the thing is everything in our Constitution matters. All of our civil liberties matter tremendously. And in our freedom of speech is definitely one of the pillars of our freedom. And so when you look at how big tech and big media and now even the scientific community are being controlled by the government, they're not being allowed to share the truth. They're not allowed to ask questions. Can you imagine a scientific community that exactly right? Can you imagine a scientific community that doesn't work on truth? I mean, man, if you're not looking at like what's real and what's reality, how are you going to innovate and how are you going to evolve and create value
that
for the
is
world?
Kind of what we're seeing. That is kind of what we're seeing when we're not taking challenges to the very antiquated idea of Darwinian evolution and looking at what modern science and discoveries are showing us, so that we can look deeper and say, what the heck is really going on? Where did we come from? What are we all about? Watch our shows on Tuesday, because that's what we talk about, that very kind of thing. We're in that, like you said, that's being shut down as well. No, we can't challenge that. We like it here. We don't want to see anything else.
Yeah, but let me shield you from the truth that comes from the scientist who actually created mRNA vaccines. Let's shield you from questions that are actually being asked by the former CDC director back when science was a thing. Having a lot of doctors in my family, doctors who are in some cases very respected, some that have worked to actively research cures for cancer, to hear them say, I can't speak my mind in the work environment because I have to fear being fired or being alienated. That's crazy. A doctor, a scientist should be able to say the most extreme things out there, right? Because they're doing really extreme stuff. They're questioning truths, and then they're proving and disproving certain theories to create that's why everything cool from our country has been stolen by socialist governments, right? Because we have the truth and we iterate from it, and because
we challenge things. And in countries like those where you're not allowed to challenge going ideas, New ideas aren't introduced. That iron sharpening iron doesn't happen, and you don't get very sharp. Then you're not the sharpest tool in the shed. Just saying. You know what we turned into? We are those monkeys. We're those see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil monkeys, and have no truth, have no real truth. That's what we are.
Yeah,
we're the monkeys.
Can you imagine, like, like in North Korea, they have like those professional criers, and like their job is to like cry, like whenever like the North Korean dictator is like, like, can you just imagine a society where you have professional, like, just fake emotions, like, oh my gosh, we have to mirror and represent every emotion of our supreme leader. Oh, is it time to cry today? Oh, is it time to clap profusely? What are we clapping at? I don't know. Just clap.
Just do it. But that's really where we're at today, and that's where why we're doing this broadcast today. It's so important getting our kind of State of the Union, some things that are going on that maybe you aren't hearing, which is what we do with the Riz Report, looking at some of the news of the week, what's happening through the week, and things that are not being widely reported. We're trying to report here with balance, with integrity, making sure that what we do talk about is not just hearsay. That's really important. That's how I get these messages from people, Adam, like, oh, you're doing something so noble. Dude, I don't mean to diss your praise, but this isn't noble. It's called journalism.
Right.
It's called journalism. Yeah. That's what we're supposed to do. You just you report, you give, try to bring some balance. You aren't afraid to ask those questions. It's just journalism. Why is it that all of a sudden MyMichelleLive is like, wow, look at what? It's not. This is not innovation. It's journalism. Right. That's what we're supposed to do. And I wanted to show one more picture. There you are. Is this your congressman's office with your beautiful wife?
Yeah, they let me sit in his chair from when he was a state representative before going to the U.S. Congress.
Y'all look like you belong there. Come on.
Well, we'll see. It was a great staff, great team there.
Adam, 2024.
Well, hey, I never say never, right? All I can say is, hopefully my example specific to my company's YouTube channel being banned, hopefully, I can kind of serve as a positive source of hope for a lot of you who have been silenced. Be vocal.
Thank you.
Talk about the injustices that are there. Don't self-censor. Never self-censor. That's the worst thing. And that's exactly what organizations like BLM want you to do. They want you to shut up. Don't shut up. The First Amendment is there to protect even speech that we disagree with, right? Yeah. So speak your mind. Even if you disagree with me and with Michelle and I, right? Let us know. We appreciate that.
Oh, come on. And it's just fine. Absolutely bring it.
We're not Korea where we're all yes men.
Exactly.
Yeah, bring it, baby.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. Like this, share this, because it's not just about, this was kind of a good program. It's about the perpetuation of freedom of speech. We have to like programs like this, and you'll see others like them, share them, a comment. I don't care if it's just a smiley face in the box, or just a hi. Every time you comment, it helps to propel this kind of thing, and it sends a message to all of the big tech companies and social media sites that this program airs on, all of the podcast venues. It sends a message that people are interested in freedom of speech, this kind of programming. If you want to save the kind of programming you love, then anytime someone's speaking out against the norm and bringing this balance, you got to like it and share it. Go to MyMichelleLive.com. And Adam, have a safe trip home. Thanks for sharing our beautiful nation's capital.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to do the Riz Report on MyMichelleLive. Thank y'all so much.
And we are calling that a wrap. Well, at least we were going to. We were going to even play music, but for some reason, actually, guys, I've been on the road for a while, and I'm finally home. But now getting home, I got to learn to press the buttons again. There you go.
There's the button.
There's the button.
For more fun, go to MyMichelleLive.com.
Go to MyMichelleLive.com. Good job.